Hi, I'm the Gadget Guru, Andy Parr, and you're watching Videos by Andy. Well, I'm back with Dulce. We're going to continue our conversation about recreational copter insurance. So stay tuned, and part 2 starts right now. Okay, we're back with Dulce. Now, if you didn't see part 1 and you're interested in hearing our conversation about recreational copter insurance, just click right down here, and here's a link to part 1. At the end of that video, you'll get a link to bring you right back here. Okay, Dulce, we covered a lot of topics, and again, we're trying to stick our copter insurance topics to recreational usage. Now, just recently, the FAA came out with their registration requirements, and basically what they're saying is, and I'll sum it up, it's not that difficult, that existing owners or existing pilots, anybody who owns copters, needs to register within a certain amount of period, and there is a cost associated. It's minimal. It works out to like $1.67 per year. The main reason is you have to put in a valid credit card, and it uses for verification. You take that number, you put it on your copter. It can be somewhere like a battery compartment, or it can be visible. You don't have to register your copters. You're basically registering yourself. Now, you know, that's the main part of it, and it seems pretty easy. There's a lot of controversy, and there's some, groups, some trade groups around that are taking a good hard look at it right now. And I'm not going to get into politics of it. I will tell you that I registered. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that these rules were necessitated by some people who were flying too high, flying too far, doing things they shouldn't be doing, putting videos of their antics online for everybody to see. These rules had to come. Now, my question to you is, now that the FAA has required these mandates, and the other thing I was going to say is that new copter owners, that they are supposed to register before they go into the air. So you have existing ones who have a time frame, and then you have new ones who should register to go up. With these new rules in place, how does this change the game? I mean, if somebody has a peril or accident, whatever, but they have failed to register, does that affect whatsoever insurance?
I don't think that in the very beginning it's going to affect them. What's going to happen, unfortunately, as I had mentioned before, our industry catches up to what's going on. So the insurance industry is going to see if there are a large number of our insureds that are not following the guidelines. I will tell you that under all of the policies, it always says that if you are committing an illegal act, we do not cover your liability for an illegal act. Anything that is illegal is not covered. So will they take the use of a copter that would be covered, because let's say that you were flying it and all of a sudden it hit the windshield of the car, and now you have a liability situation because you got to pay for that property damage. Will they use the FAA guidelines, the failure to comply with those FAA guidelines, as a way to deny the claim? I don't see it happening yet. I do see it maybe happening down the line, but we'll see, because they would have to change the policy forms. I do see, and I can tell you right now, that I see them probably coming out with an endorsement to a policy, to all policies, saying if you own and you use this type of equipment, there's going to be limited coverage for this or that or the other. I can see that coming, but it's going to be, it really is going to be based on the data that the insurance companies collect as to types of losses that they're having, whether the losses are coming from people that are not obeying the regulation. It's going to be how they're going to use it. So with everything in our industry, they will track the trends and then adjust according to those trends. Right now, I don't think you'll have a problem. This is too new. They don't have enough data yet on the recreational use. I mean, they've gathered data in the last 2-3 years on the commercial use, but really recreational was not really on their radar as a big item yet. I mean, it was a blip.
Let's go through what somebody would go through. And let's say they have a crash and it caused property damage, somebody else's property. So there's a claim. Let's just use a round number. There's $10,000 in damage, just making up that number. You get the phone call, and let's say it was me, and I go, hey, Dulce, you have my policy here. I just did this. What questions do you ask me?
I will be asking, okay, what did you hit? What were you doing at the time that the incident happened? Was there a malfunction of the unit? I mean, were you operating the unit? Did you feel that it was starting to sputter or that it was not responding correctly? Or was it just behaving as usual without an issue? We're going to try to find out what exactly led, okay, to that claim, because when you look back at negligence is that you're supposed to, has 4 parts to it. You're supposed to behave or act in a certain way not to cause injury or harm to people. The failure to act that way, right, then caused property damage or injury to someone. And now we can actually piece together an unbroken chain of events that had you done this wouldn't have happened, and then if this wouldn't have happened, these people or property would have been injured or damaged.
And let's say it was my copter. Are you going to want to see the copter?
Yeah, of course they're going to want to see the copter.
What do you check for when you?
Well, I'm not an insurance adjuster, and
Okay.
I'm not an engineer, or a mechanic. They're going to check and see, and they're going to interview you. Did you notice anything while you were before impact? Did you notice anything? Were you trying to bring it back? Did it not? So they're going to ask you that, but then they're going to check it to see if something was wrong with the copter. Was there maybe a modification that was done that may have made it short circuit in some way? Was it just a regular short circuit that just happened and happened to occur at that moment? So they're going to check and see the condition of the copter. Was it properly maintained? If it was in good working order, was it modified?
So basically, it's going to be user error, manufacturer's error, or a modification created the error. Okay, if it's user error, you're going to be insured if your policy is in good standing.
Right, accidents happen.
If it's manufacturer error, you're going to pay the claim, then you're going to attempt to go after the manufacturer or the seller or whoever.
Right.
What happens in a modification?
In a modification, at this point, you have now, you're not an engineer. This is not something that you do. You decided to tinker with it. Well, why did you tinker with it? Well, I wanted to go farther away, and I wanted to go a little higher, and I wanted to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Well, all those things are not within the manufacturer's guidelines. It's not what the manufacturer intended. So now, pretty much, by you tinkering with it, you may have just tinkered with your insurance policy too.
Really?
Okay.
So modifying your copter in the case of a peril, I mean, if nothing happens bad and whatever, nobody would ever know. But in the case of a peril,
you could be putting your insurance company, your insurance coverage at risk, because you don't know what kind of stance they're going to take. When you tinker with an object to do something other, and now that causes injury or harm, then you have just committed an intentional act.
okay,
and can they exclude that?
Play devil's advocate, because remember, this is airing on to copper enthusiasts.
These are just going to be examples.
How is that different to somebody who changes the exhaust on a car, or who does something to modify a car? If that car was involved in an accident, would the insurance companies not insure the car?
Well, they would probably at first pay the claim. Well, obviously, they're going to pay the claim to the injured party because there's an accident, and they're going to come back and find out what actually happened. Why did you lose control of the car that you were driving? Why did the car not respond? Okay, so they're going to see if it was a mechanical error. Could it have been a mechanical error caused when you took it in to get it serviced? Because I just took my car and they were just fixing this. What could have been something they did there? Or was it something that you did to the car? Now, they're not going to hold anything against you if you were changing your own oil, or you fixed things on your car yourself. It's if you made modifications to make it a high performance. To make it high performance. Well, right now, if you read your policy, if you do anything like that takes this regular vehicle and makes it high performance, then we know that there might be a situation, especially if you tinkered with your car because you need it to be high performance because you're trying to go and race it. There's amateur racing, and people do that to their cars.
I have a sports car in my garage, and I know one time I attempted to read my insurance policy. It's that thick, but I did notice on page 843, whatever it is, deep in it. But it was in bold
Deep in the
big
weeds,
print
yes.
that this car was not to be used on tracks.
Yeah.
That if I took it to a professional racetrack, that basically, it would, any accidents would not be covered. Now, let's take this back over to copters again and talk about modifications. I know on one of my copters, the unique Typhoon, that the video signal on here, only it starts breaking up around 450 feet. Well, while the FAA says that you need to fly within line of sight, personally, with my vision, if it went 700, 900, because of the size of the copter, if it went 1,000 feet, I could still see it. But I'm losing my video signal. If I did a modification on that, which allowed me to see video and still stay within FAA regulation, because I'm modifying the copter and something happens to it, that means I'm not going to be insured?
Well, they're going to find out is the video recorder or the camera that's on this copter separate from the
It
mechanics.
would be a separate transmitter that
different transmitter, different mechanics. Something else operates the camera versus operating the copter. So if you did a modification to the camera, like changing lenses and things like that, or just the transmitter itself, so it could get a better signal to you, that might not be an issue. The issue would be if you maybe made a modification to the copter's engine and to the controls.
But how about if, because remember, this is using wireless signals. Do you think, is it safe to say that if you made a modification of the video signal, and could that affect the other wireless? Is the insurance company going to try to take that type of stance?
Well, they might take a look at it. It would have to be proven. It's just like what's happening now with the hoverboards. Those things just came out. They're a big thing, but we all know that they're starting to have issues with the battery packs in those hoverboards and the fires. We have houses burning down.
Yeah.
Besides the people falling down, which after a certain age,
that's health insurance.
After a certain age, don't get on those things. That's health insurance number one. But we're looking at the property damage and the liability. You take the hoverboard with you to a hotel. You're on vacation. You brought it with you. Your kid brought it with them, and they put it. And now the hotel catches a fire.
Wow. Then now
my homeowner's policy is going to have to pay, and I better have an umbrella policy on top of the $300,000 because I don't think $300,000 is going to be enough.
That's a good point. Now that certain models of hoverboards, not all of them are going to explode.
No.
Let's say that they finally figure out which ones are doing it, and let's say
and they know that there's a defect.
They say there's a do not ride type of thing. If somebody ignores that and takes it in a hotel and gives that hotel catching on fire scenario, with the insurance company say, hey, wait, you weren't supposed to be using
You're supposed to act prudently. It could have been that it was still, let's say it was in a box, they had just purchased it. They're going to look at the circumstances. When you look at the copters, and let's use this perfect scenario. You're here and you're operating your copter, and it's, like you said, in line of sight, and if you're getting your perfect video, whatever, all of a sudden, there's some kind of interference. Today, there's a lot of interference with all these wireless things that we have going on between the towers and the cell phones and the cordless and all these things. So let's say that as you're flying it, somehow the copter loses signal for a couple seconds. And it loses control and it goes somewhere that you don't want it to. You did not intend for it to go. So you lost control of the copter for a few seconds. Well, in those few seconds, the copter went into traffic. And a car sees it and they're startled and they try to weave to avoid it. And now they hit a house, lose control of the car, hit a house, hit a fire hydrant,
So you have the
hit another
storm.
car, call at that point, they're going to say, okay, how did this accident happen? And the first driver is going to say, there was a copter coming right at me. It startled me. I didn't know how to react, and I swerved to try to avoid it. And now I caused a 4-car pileup. Well, technically, the person who caused the accident was you.
Okay.
So you could be held liable for those 4
So
cars.
the thing is, and if you haven't modified your copter, stock copter, no issue. If you have, it's a gray area.
If you've modified it, it could be a gray area.
One more question, because I've wondered about this now that I have the opportunity to ask you. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with FPV. You know, at FPV, instead of looking at a screen, so to see your camera, you can wear goggles or a type of glasses, almost like a Google Glass or like an Oculus, where you get to see where the copter is. Well, let's say somebody adds that type of modification with the intention of being able to fly it beyond line of sight, because that way you can see it. If you're, like, you can't tour looking at those houses and trees, where you could fly beyond that. Is that type of modification, is that going to affect insurance in case?
Well, they're going to say, well, were you operating it? And they're going to go, well, were you being prudent? Were you operating it safely? Were you operating under the guidelines set forth? In this case, as you just said, there's new guidelines that were just set forth the week, like a few days before Christmas. So they're going to look at those things. I think today it might not get that muddy or sticky, but I think as time passes, it will. I mean, if you notice in the news, you haven't heard anything about copters in a while. And all of a sudden, it has been
kind of quiet.
And it was quiet. And then all of a sudden, you heard about the different, and as you said, they call it in the media, the drones. The people they're flying their drones. How someone was flying it over a tennis match. Where someone was flying it near buildings, where all of a sudden there was a skiing incident. And obviously this was not recreational, the skiing incident, but the copter fell right a few seconds right behind when the skier came by. And they were talking about, oh my God, it could have fallen on him. You know, it could have fallen on the skier, could have injured the skier. So once you see more and more of these stories and more claims, and there's more things happening, the insurance industry is going to have to address it specifically. Right now, we're addressing it as this is just another piece of personal property or business personal property. So for the same intents and purposes, you have a remote control car that you have your 10 or 13-year-old driving around the community and, you know, is driving in the middle of the street, and all of a sudden it causes a little situation with a car. Same, now it gets squashed and the car maybe veered and hit a bush or
so
hit
going back
a
to
wall.
something earlier.
They're going to treat it the same way.
The insurance companies typically stay a step or two behind.
Right.
But then, if it does become a problem, then they start instituting new rules or restrictions.
Restrictions under the policies. There will be endorsements under the policies, basically saying, if you have this type of equipment and you're operating this type of equipment, we're only going to pay X for the equipment, or they could put a sub limit on it, or they could go ahead and say, we'll only carry liability for X, this, that, and the other. So they can restrict the coverage under the policy. Like I say, they will make modifications to the insurance policy based on the data that they collect from claims, from losses, from incidents. And that's how it's going to happen. Do I see anything happening in the next 12 months? Not really. The only thing is, we insurance agents will be telling our customers that if you bought your teenager, I mean, every insurance agent should be doing this, you bought your teenager a copter that has a video camera on it, you know, spend the $25, $30.
So PIL.
Get your personal injury liability coverage. It's the best thing you could do. Because like we say, they don't really mean harm. They're having fun. They caught something interesting. They now post it somewhere.
In this day and age, everybody posts everything
and it's going to come back.
Okay.
And it's very possible it's going to come back and bite someone.
Okay. Anyway, I want to thank you for your time. Let's go on and put up your email address just like we did in the previous video. If you have any questions for Dulce, she was kind enough that she'll take them. Don't bother her with garbage. But if you have any legitimate copter questions about insurance, it's dresnick at ncfins.com. Dulce, I want to thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
For videos by Indy.com, I'm the Gadget Guru Andy Power, and I'll see you online and in the air.